He kind of deserved this river. So I don't really get this play. I mean, Doug raises to 9-10 on the button with 4-6 suited, definitely standard. And Daniel is going to 3-bet as well as call a hand like this. Obviously, folding is out of the question. Your hand is suited, connected, nice and playable. So can't really blame him for 3-betting. And he goes for, a 10.5 roughly BB 3-bet, which is actually a pretty good sizing. I believe Doug will just call this hand. It's not really the best 4-betting hand. I do think it's good enough to call, unless you believe Daniel is so insanely nitty. But especially deep stack, this hand plays pretty well. We got a very juicy flop right here. Doug obviously is very, very happy. Daniel is moderately happy. He knows this board is not extremely good for him, as in Doug can easily have 6s, 4s, deuces, 6-4, which he does right here. He can have 5-3. He can have some bigger flush draws. Ace-5 of heart, for instance, comes to mind. So Daniel has to be quite careful on a board like this. So if Daniel is able to check here, which I think is a cool play sometimes, I would give him a good amount of credit. And Daniel eventually goes for a big bet. Not really a play I would recommend, but I understand what he's doing. The problem is that if you get shoved on here, you just have to fold, right? I mean, we're so deep. If Daniel had to call off like 10, 15K more, you just got to do it. But with so much left behind, you're kind of putting yourself in trouble. You're putting yourself in trouble against hands like these, and you're allowing other hands to fold. Hands that you would be getting value from on later streets, if, let's say, you hit a jack or a 9 or a flush. Will be interesting to see what Doug does. If I were Doug, I'd probably go ahead and raise right now. I do believe that's the play he's going to make. In fact, I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't. And call me surprised. He only called. Turn is a 10, which shouldn't change things too much. Doug could have a 10 and a flush draw. He can maybe have pocket 10s or 10-6, but that's about it. Maybe he makes a lighter call with hand like ace-10 of clubs. Or maybe even a very light float with hand like 10-9 of clubs. Daniel could have hit that 10 as well with clubs or, a hand like pocket 10s, but it's not the most relevant card out there. It's not like the 5 of hearts or anything. I expect Daniel to bet again here. His hand has no showdown value, but it's got, it's got an overcard. The 9 is sometimes live, and he's got a flush draw. Will be interesting to see what he bets. And he doesn't bet, he ends up checking. He must think that Doug's range for calling this big bet is very strong, and then maybe goes check, and he can see a free river. However, Doug is not going to give him a free river. Doug is for sure going to bet. If he doesn't bet, then I don't know what to say. I'll be shocked if he doesn't bet. Okay, finally got one right. Doug does bet, and now you're in a shitty spot as Daniel, right? I mean, you're getting great odds to continue in the hand, but then again, you've got a jack-high flush draw. So, I mean, Doug could be bluffing with something better occasionally, right? Your flush draw may not always be live. Maybe if the board pairs, let's say you hit your deuce of hearts, is that good? Maybe Doug just has 4s or 6s or 10s. So Daniel kind of put himself in a little bit of trouble here by playing his hand passively. So I don't really know what he's going to do. I would predict he goes... I don't think he folds. So I think he probably goes for the check call. But then again, you're calling with jack high in a big pot, which is not something you generally want to do. And Daniel actually shoves all in. Obviously, getting snap called by Doug. Doug knows that he's realistically only behind against a hand like pocket 10s or, maybe 5-3 suited, but very unlikely. So the problem with fast playing this jack high flush draw is that you're going to be in very big trouble when you get it in, right? At least here, it doesn't matter which flush draw he has. It's live anyway. But oftentimes, Doug will have a hand like ace-5 of hearts, and your hearts are not live. So, yeah, that was an unlucky spot for Daniel. But I also don't think he played it very well. I would give Doug I'll give him a 9 out of 10. I think his play was great. You could have raised the flop, but other than that, his play was great. And I'll give Daniel a 5 out of 10. I don't really like his line too much, especially deep stacked. Deep stack poker is quite a bit different to regular poker. So, Doug opens Jack-7 suited on the button, definitely standard, and you cannot fold to a 3-bet here, which I expect is what Daniel's going to do. Absolutely fine. 4-betting would be quite loose as well. Generally you want to have at least one high card. Not always, but generally you want to have at least one high card. And we get a very, very interesting flop. Both guys love this flop, but hate it at the same time. Doug, I mean, he's got a straight, but then, he knows he could be dead already, right? So he knows he has the best hand, probably 95, maybe 90 to 95% of the time. And, he doesn't really have outs in case he's behind, right? Daniel knows that he almost for sure has outs, but then again, his hand is a little bit worse right now. So it's definitely a board on which Daniel has to be very careful. Doug can have all the sets, straights, two pairs, big flush draws, pair plus flush draw, pair plus straight draw, all the good stuff. So you can't just ship this one all in and hope for the best. So Daniel actually goes for a really, really small bet, which is actually a very clever play. So I heard that he's been getting coached by a supposed top heads-up no-limit player. So I didn't really agree with what happened in the previous hand, but this is a pretty strong play. Doug does not raise. He definitely needs to raise sometimes against this type of small bet size, but I think it's fine to just call and keep some strong hands in your calling range, especially since he doesn't have a heart in his hand. The king doesn't really hurt Daniel. If Doug had queen jack, he would already have the best hand. So, maybe Doug now has a hand like king 9, king 10, king 8. So I expect Daniel to probably bet. Makes sense? And I don't know Doug's heads-up game very well, but from what I've seen of his game, I would expect him to call, which is absolutely a fine play. Maybe he thinks Daniel's going to station with hands like ace-king with a heart or king-queen with a heart, or even with something like a set like he's got. And now Daniel's in a tough spot, right? I mean, you've got around 90% pot left. Do you go for something like a 5 to 9K bet? Do you go for an all-in? Do you even check, perhaps, and make Doug bluff with a hand like ace-jack with a heart? So all three options actually make a lot of sense. Given that it's heads up and, Daniel's used to playing deeper stack games, I would expect Daniel to probably shove here, which is a thin value bet for sure. But I think it's probably fine against a loose and aggressive player like Doug, who's capable of making light calls. If you're playing against a big nit, I mean, you may have the best hand, but you're not getting called. And Doug obviously isn't folding. He knows he can be behind, but he knows also Daniel can have 6-7 for value. He can have maybe a set. He can obviously be bluffing. If I fold a hand like this, which is one of the better hands in my range, then I'm just not calling enough, right? So I beat too many of Daniel's thin value bets. I beat too many bluffs. I could be behind, but easy call. And Doug wins the second one. I would say this hand was played pretty well by both of them. I'll give both of them. I'll give them both of them an 8.5 out of 10. I think it was a good play. 2.5 by Daniel. Again, standards. Doug is going to 3-bet aces, and Daniel is almost for sure going to call. I'll be very surprised if he did anything else. 4-betting, I guess, would be a little bit better than folding, but calling is by far the best play. Doug actually sized down a little bit there. Okay, board is 8-8-5. Doug cannot love this board. I mean, there's 7.5K in the pot with 61 behind, so, Doug definitely knows he can be beat here. But then again, it's not that bad, right? You're losing to a 5, and you're losing to a pocket 5s, you're losing to an 8. And the fact that there's 2 8s out there means that there's obviously only 2 left, so it's a discounted amount of 8x. So Doug goes for the half-pot bet, which is okay. You could also check a hand like this sometimes and trap. But now, obviously, Doug is, he's calling his mom, saying, "Mom, I'm rich. I'm going to win a big pot right here." He's very happy to see this 8. Obviously, pocket 5s is no longer the best hand against his aces. And an 8 is now even less likely because there's only 4 8s in the deck, of course. So Doug could, again, check here, make Daniel bluff with a hand like a 9-7, 6-7 or Jack 10 or whatever he's got. He can maybe even check raise against a pair or an under pair, something like that. So he could definitely check, but I suspect he's going to bet. My suspicions are correct. He goes full pot. I mean, he's basically saying, hey, I have a lot of big overpairs. You don't. Your range is very capped. I'm messing with you here. I'm just going to go crazy. And Doug is going to do this with aces, but he's also going to do this with hand like 2 overcards. So, and obviously Daniel has an easy fold. Even if he hits a 6, he would be dead against an overpair. His 7 and his 9 are often not live. They aren't here, so easy fold. Okay. I thought we were kind of done with this hand, but apparently we're not. Daniel floated the turn. He kind of deserved this river. So I don't really get this play. I mean, Daniel has 4 outs, 2 to 6. One of them brings a flush, right? And even if he hits and Doug has an overpair, he's still behind. So I have no idea what he's doing here. I guess he must think Doug is super barrel heavy on early streets, and he can just, bluff him on later streets. But I mean, you're not giving Doug any credit here for being a good player. So yeah, this play doesn't really make any sense. This is a pure fuck you. I think you're weak, and I'm going to take it away from you on the river play. I think what's actually quite a reasonable thought process is that he didn't see the third 8, and he thought he had a gut shot. In which case, you would still have to fold because you still have a shitty draw facing a pot-sized bet on a flush draw board. But at least it would be more reasonable, right, as a fuck you play. So this is a huge fuck you play. And when you make plays like these, you kind of deserve this type of stuff. I assume Doug is just going to shove for about, 90-something% pot. And, well, I don't see Daniel having... I mean, Daniel can have a hand like pocket 10s, but it's kind of the same as this hand, right? So I think he would probably have to call down. Doug is going to still barrel with some overcards here, like, Jack 10. So against a good player capable of bluffing, I definitely think you need to call this. Shoves all in. I mean, it would be absolutely ridiculous to call a pot-sized bet, get the best river in the deck. I mean, the 7 or the 9, the best rivers in the deck, and then you end up, folding, right? Then why the hell are you calling? Then you're just hoping Doug check folds river. So I would be very surprised if Daniel somehow folded here. Can't blame him for calling. But then again, I mean, he just did this to himself. This was I'll give Doug a 7.5 out of 10. I think his play could have been polished a little bit. It was a little bit rough on the edges, but then again, he won a $200,000 pot. I'll give Daniel I'll give him a 2. I mean, I was thinking more in the 4 or 5 range, but no. The pre-flop open and call, good. Nothing else you can do. On the flop, I mean, I guess you can raise if you like, but calling is absolutely fine. So far 10 out of 10, but then on the turn, that's a 0 out of 10 call. So, and then on the river, okay, I guess I cannot blame him. He would get a 0 if he folded the river. At least he called the river, but I'm not sure what's happening right here. Yeah, this is a very confusing play by Daniel. So far, we've seen some plays that I thought were okay, but could have been better. However, this play is just absolutely out of the question.
All right, guys and girls, that has been it for me. What do you think about these hands? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future episodes. Also, make sure to grab my brand new free training series that would help you make more money playing poker without studying more before it expires. You will find the link in the description down below. See you next time, and thanks for watching.